talk about betting?
I like to bet.
Wow, that's part of what we're talking about. How do you bet? Welcome back to part 3 here on the deep dive. This time we're going to be talking purely about wagering and the wagering landscape, so to speak, WA versus some of the other states as well. Terry Leighton, this is your wheelhouse in terms of betting. How have you found being able to get on for a bet, not only get on for a bet, but then also wager, get your turnover up over the last probably 3-4 years, and have you noticed any change in that time?
I have. Oh, I don't know whether I've noticed change. I guess I've probably changed as a punter. You sort of, I work on a method where you sort of try and, as your bank builds, you exponentially bet more, obviously, as it normally works. But trying to get on, it can be quite the nightmare. I believe in it. There's aspects of the game where the gentleman side of things, where I believe you shouldn't be. If you know you've got a certain account or a certain thing, and if you have a bet, even to win 500, 1,000, the price will be knocked by 20, 30%, maybe more. I try to look at the gentleman aspect of punting, where I don't like to do that. I don't like to use those accounts, because then I'm ruining it for the next person who wants to back that same horse. So we talk about minimum bet laws. I'd like to see, I don't know how you can enforce this properly. I'm sure you can. You'd probably know more than me in this sense. But I'd like to see a bookmaker almost have to hold a certain amount on a horse before it shortens, or have to. I don't know how exactly that would work, because obviously they see the other agencies move and they go with it.
Well, it's an algorithm now, isn't it?
It is, 100%. It's an algorithm. Exactly right. And that's probably what I've found to be the biggest frustration. So we've all got limits on certain accounts, or limits at the local agencies, and you have to time it so you're backing them all across those accounts if you want to get on for that certain amount at the same time, because that'll knock that price, which will then knock that price, which will then knock that price, and it's a domino effect. And someone else is probably looking, going, wow, that was 10s to 5s. That's just one person's opinion having a bet. That'll probably end up trading at 12, 13s on the day type thing. So,
and that's probably the hard part at the moment, is that certainly by the looks of things, we're seeing some really bizarre fluctuations late in some races in WA, and I think it's purely because some of those early fluctuations, it might just be one person or a very small group of people, and then when the weight of money comes from some of the biggest syndicates in the last 3 to 4 minutes of betting, then all of a sudden those opinions become almost irrelevant, or if they disagree, you see the market react as a result.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think a great example on the weekend, and in a big race, it shouldn't be happening, because they should be holding a lot more, and they should be less fickle. I mean, I don't know the size wager someone's had, but Platoon was something like 50s or 60s into about 15s, 14s. Came to about 5th, 6th favouritism. By the jump, it got out the door again on the exchange. But that was a great example of just seeing a massive movement, but they tend to then correct themselves late.
Same could be said for the favourite as well. I think it was 245 on Thursday, and ended up getting back out as well. So.
A lot of that was the ratings guys, I think, as well, who didn't have it as prominently in their markets. But I just don't have any confidence in what I'm doing or how I'm getting on. It's just it's too fickle a system, which we currently have at the moment, and it'd just be nice to have some real clarity and some real understanding. We're a bit of a lawless state. I mean, you're going to speak about the MBLs, and you know a lot more about that than I do, but it just feels like we're in a bit of a lawless state at the moment, and it's sort of, I don't know, I just don't have any confidence in what I'm doing.
So Terry, is your turnover
angry?
No, is your turnover like stagnant at the moment? Are you looking to increase your turnover? Are you looking to decrease? Like, what's your, as a professional, like, what are you looking to do? And how is the current structure set up? Does that help you do what you want to do, or is it impacting the way you're trying to run your business?
No, it's an impossibility at the moment. It means, obviously, we know that we can't have accounts with even local agencies. It's very difficult to get on as we'd like to do. I understand in the days preceding a race meet, we have to have lower limits, because it's early opinion based betting. But I mean, on the days at the moment, in as I said, Pete's about to discuss this with the NBLs. We're just a long way behind the rest of Australia, I think, in that sense, and that makes it. It's making it near impossible to have any sort of faith in what I'm doing at the moment.
So yeah, you left Western Australia to obviously increase your turnover. So what's your personal experience been?
So the lack of minimum bet laws really does impact. And I mean, let's face it, the minimum bet laws at the moment, I'm sure a lot of the big punters over east would agree, it's not a perfect system. It's still changing.
But at least you know what the system is.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
there is a fixed system.
I just love to know what I'm working with, and then I can allow for it and cater for it in my own sort of practices and structures and whatnot. So
I mean, I'll put it this way. Quick solution. If Rawa took a balls to the wall approach, because potentially it's going to be inevitable that MBLs are going to come in WA anyway.
Yeah.
But they've put that behind the sale of the TAB. They've tried to make that the priority, but the conversation about MBLs have been happening for the best part of at least 4 years, probably even longer. Now, if they went and took a real risk and suggested that MBLs were there from the time that markets opened, so if you wanted to open a market on any racing event in WA, that means it's on Thursday or Wednesday for a Saturday meeting. If you put that market up, you are then liable for MBLs from that time onwards, which is what a lot of the big pros over East are talking about. Not only would it give them confidence to then look at WA racing and say, right, I could actually make this a real win and go here.
But do you think they'd push back markets till Saturday morning though?
Look, that's okay if it
that
does.
bad?
Yeah,
No,
I'm actually okay with that.
I think
I'm 100%
I think some of the
that.
big corporates out there would actually take the risk, knowing full well that they're increasing turnover as a result, and that's the main issue. A lot of the initiatives being brought in by RAWA over the last couple of years have been meant to help turnover, but has not helped turnover one bit. And I've got some stats to basically back all this up. You have to bear with me for a second, but I will publish these up on the screen so you can have a bit of a read. But if we go back to August 2018, RAWA's changed their model of taxing race fields, and it's basically mirroring the Racing Victoria model. So effectively what happens is that if you as a corporate bookmaker make a profit on a race meeting, you get charged a percentage of that. If you lose as a corporate bookmaker on a set meeting, you actually get charged a percentage of your turnover. Now, what happens in Victoria and WA is that occurs on a meeting by meeting basis. In the rest of the states, it happens on a monthly aggregate. So effectively, if you have a winning month as a bookmaker, you get charged on that. Now, the difficulty when charging on a meeting by meeting basis is this: basically, if you have a winning day and then a losing day, you may actually break even, but you're still paying fees back to the state. And so that makes it really difficult to actually win as a bookmaker, and that makes it even harder for punters to win because they're passing on that to us. Now, we then have a look at the Top Sport situation, which from July 1st, Top Sport quite publicly came out and changed the way they were dealing with both WA and Victoria. That included removing products such as Best of the Best, Best Tote Place. They were increasing their target market percentages. They were decreasing their existing minimum bet laws. So for WA, although it didn't exist, they were still offering most punters a decent amount to get on for. And they were also delaying the release of fixed odds until 9 a.m. our time here in the West. Now, they, quote unquote, intended to bring about a reduction in our turnover on and our tax burden in respect of West Australian events. So they are deliberately trying to reduce the amount that people are wagering on WA and Victorian racing because it actually costs them more money to actually have those markets even open. So that happened
Which is concerning.
It is concerning.
Massively concerning.
And so that tax came in from August 2018. We then had the 15% point of consumption tax come in January 1st, 2019. That was modelled on the South Australian example that started up in 2017, 15%. Some of the other states are different. So in terms of New South Wales, it's 10%. Victoria is 8%. And what we've seen over the last couple of years in terms of the WATAB margin, it's been going down year on year. So in fact, the 2018 to 2019 year was 15 million less than the previous financial year in the annual report. Now, what's happened as a result, though, of adding this tax from 2018 from August is that their race fields income has gone from 58 million up to the best part of 81 million. So they're getting a lot more money from corporate bookmakers across the board and from, as a result, punters coming in terms of their race fields income. The point of consumption tax has conveniently filled a hole that was there in a differential in the wagering tax. But because turnover's been going down, I was trying to figure out how our markets were comparing on Betfair over the Group 1 race weekend. So basically I was looking at Group 1 race days where you might have one Group 1 race, comparing it to South Australia's Carnival, Queensland's Carnival, and then comparing it to Group 1 race days in Victoria and New South Wales, where you have one Group 1 race on the day, doing an average of every race matched on Betfair and then on the feature. Now, what we've seen over the last year is that WA has consistently been the lowest in terms of average matched per race on these Group 1 feature cards. It has been going up year on year, but in the last year in 2019, the carnival just gone, we've seen a significant jump matched in the average per race and then also on the feature races. And I thought that was really interesting because compared with the amount matched there in Victoria, it's really chicken feed. But it is actually improving. I thought, well, why is that the case? You then marry that up with what came in on August 2018 in terms of the tax. So the wagering has gone down with corporate bookmakers and including the tab here. And by the looks of things, punters have actually gravitated towards Betfair. And that's despite the fact that WA has one of the highest tax rates in terms of Betfair in terms of your commission. WA and New South Wales actually charge percentage on the turnover with Betfair, not on the revenue, which is what the other states do. So effectively, if you're a trader and you profit for $10 across a series of 10 bets, New South Wales and WA are charging Betfair based on every transaction, not just the overall profit. So all this is made for a very interesting situation where WA, in terms of Betfair, it's been good for them because they're actually taking more of a commission because they're getting more matched, but at the same time, they're also getting more come out of their overall turnover because that is the way that WA is charging things. The other state that's gone up through the roof over the last 4 years has been Victoria. And again, if that's the way they've been charging their corporate bookmakers for quite a while now, it's obviously very attractive to bet with Betfair in Victoria because they have the lowest percentage takeout. So overall, we're seeing a completely different marketplace, and it's all happened within 4 years. And I'm not sure it's necessarily a positive thing if you're talking about increasing turnover and wagering and racing. It's hard enough to win with the market percentages as they are. There's been plenty of good work done by Richie Irvine in terms of analysing it, and Dan O'Sullivan as well. He's released a few tweets in terms of what it's done to the actual top fluck margin in the last half hour before betting, and it's basically getting higher in terms of percentage. So as a punter, it's hard to win. What does this mean for WA racing in terms of the sale of the TAB? That's probably the really big question, because if we're still another 2 years away from minimum bet laws, I'm not exactly sure what that's going to mean for wagering in terms of both through corporate bookmakers, in terms of the race field levies that WA is getting from those corporate bookmakers, and then also for the WA TAB that is going to be sold as a product next year.
So you couldn't imagine that they'd want to introduce minimum bet laws until after the sale of the TAB.
I think reading between the lines, it's too far gone. Nobody cares.
Would would minimum bet laws impact the price of the asset? Or the lack of minimum bet laws impact the price of the asset?
It's really difficult, and I have been going through the annual reports from all the other states trying to see what impact minimum bet laws have had on their overall turnover. And it's not crystal clear, and it's really difficult to actually find that out. You can only really just go through and see the actual wagering numbers consistently year to year and what's actually changed as a result. But the key thing is with all of those states, the point of consumption tax has come in and it just seems to be plugging gaps. And they're relying on that as being a reliable source of income going forward.
Yeah, as long as the pie doesn't change.
Yeah, exactly. So the pie's staying the same size, but the actual wagering number for most of the states is slowly diminishing. And whether or not that's diminishing through the annual reports or it's actually diminishing through what the individual bookmakers are able to put out there, that's hard to be determined. The key thing is a few states are obviously going through the roof in terms of Betfair usage, but that doesn't help anyone.
Do you put that down to people learning more about Betfair and now understanding the product and understanding how to use it and just gravitating towards the amount they're marketing and promoting?
Yeah,
and it's for the probably the bigger punters out there as well, it takes the hassle out of thinking, can I get on? Am I going to get on?
Yep.
Because you're going to get on. It's that simple. You might have to bet just before a race, and you might not have to take the price you saw earlier in the day, but
there's still less liquidity, but certainly I think Betfair's obviously been first and foremost in terms of punter education, because it really doesn't exist anywhere else. You know, getting people on like yourself to actually do previews, explain how you come into certain decisions when it comes to betting, what prices you're happy to take, all that's really good information. So obviously that is part of the reason they're increasing their overall number, but I just found it very interesting that the two states that seem to be increasing significantly in their Betfair turnover
have the same taxation.
Have the same taxation. And again, that's when it comes down to the sale of the TAB, is anything going to benefit WA at the end of the day?
From selling it?
Yeah.
I think we'll get a cash injection.
Short-term
cash injection that's going to plug a few holes from a infrastructure point of view. Belmont might even be able to salvage something from Belmont. They'll be able to, from a thoroughbred point of view anyway, remembering that Rawa is a tri-code model, so any proceeds are going to have to be divided up amongst the 3 codes as well. So I believe that there's redevelopments at Bunbury and Pinjarra, which they're considering. So yeah, I think initially there will be some short-term benefits, but what happens after that, Pete?
Well, that's the hard part. If no one's betting on the actual game, and we're getting reduced race field sizes, if nothing's changing from a programming point of view, if punters are finding it harder to win on the WA product, why would they bother when they can just go to Victoria in particular, if they're using Betfair, or if they're using some of the corporates, go to New South Wales, get taxed less, have a better chance of winning, or hey, just go to sport. The AFL's only got a 2.5 commission rate on Betfair.
What's your solution, Pete? I reckon you're heading somewhere here. What do you think is the...
I already threw it out. I mean, look, minimum bet laws are essential and they're inevitable. And the fact it hasn't been put in so far is neglect by those in charge. And look, there's no other way of putting it, because they've just basically said for the last 4 or 5 years, we've heard about them maybe once a year in a publication, whether it's in the newspaper or on radio.
Do you think there should be a national regulator rather than a state-by-state?
Oh, look, I think
it's sort of a different. Obviously, each state's got their own.
Well, see, Rawa being a pseudo-government organisation, there's legislation that needs to be changed,
and that's what takes longer.
Yeah.
But it hasn't helped the industry where it is now. You combine that with the uncertainty of the TAB. You add in decreasing field sizes and a lessening of the breeding of horses in WA, and it's really just ended up being a bit of a schmozzle at the end of the day. And the situation we're in now, as I said earlier, the solution of introducing minimum bet laws and then taking that additional risk, because some states will beat us to it otherwise, in terms of offering minimum bet laws from the time markets go up. And if that means smaller bookmakers don't want to get involved, that's fine, because if they're not confident in the prices they're setting, well, really they're not proper bookmakers anyway. But if you tried that as an approach, if you're explaining to people how to get into punting, WA is a great case study. There's less horses here, there's less trainers, there's less jockeys. The track's consistent, the weather's very consistent at the moment, and so it's actually quite an easy environment to learn how to punt on racing. Now, the question is whether or not the interest is there anymore, because sport is just rapidly dominating the actual betting and wagering landscape. But if it is just a dying industry, it really has to be done sooner rather than later, because in another 5 years, if minimum bet laws aren't in place, who knows what the wagering landscape is going to be like in WA. And if that's the case, you look at cutting prize money, you look at reducing your overall turnover as well, and no one really knows, although they're saying that the state, in terms of racing, will be no worse off under the sale of the TAB, no one really knows what will happen if all of a sudden the new buyer is looking at horrendously declining wagering turnover in the state of WA.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure from my reading on the subject that most of the states that have sold their TAB have regretted it.
Yeah.
So that's a concern. But apparently we're going to get it right, so they say. So yeah, more will be revealed, I'd say, Pete. But this is as I mentioned earlier in the episode, that we're at a really important, vital period in the history of West Australian racing. We need to get this deal right, and if it's not right, then we just need to do what's best for the West Australian racing industry. Like it's I can't overemphasize how important this is for the future of the game, and for three guys who all love West Australian racing and make a living out of the game. Like it's and then there's the whole all the other participants involved. Like it's a massive deal, and it's a massive contributor to the state and through employment and through taxation. So I can't speak highly enough of how important this next period of time is for us.
You've got the domino effect almost potentially there, don't you? If the TAB sale doesn't work out in favour of the WA racing industry, well, all of a sudden Belmont's probably the first thing to go.
Yeah.
Racing becomes predominantly based in the southwest with Pinjarra, with Bunbury obviously being redeveloped. You've obviously will have Albany there as well, and then you'll have your Metro meet up at Ascot. But that obviously means that Ascot has to be a year-round track, and I mean, look, this is all hypothetical.
It ends up being South Australia's Mark II, really.
Exactly.
So.
And so that's the concerning thing, I guess, at the end of the day, is that if something doesn't start now, if they wait to the sale of the TAB, say it's next year, say it's a year from now, how long is it going to take to get everything in place to actually measure what's been done and then to evaluate whether it's been a positive? Because those 5 years, if it takes 5 years, it might be too late.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably the concerning thing.
And let's face it, like the Belmont redevelopment stuff and the TAB stuff has been dragging on for a long time now. And what's happened is it's created uncertainty within the industry, within participants. So people aren't gonna continually reinvest like they have to do through buying yearlings, through wagering in an industry that they don't have confidence and faith in moving forward.
We'll leave it there. It's been great having you both on for the 3-part extravaganza of the deep dive. Terry Leighton and BJ Ryan combined is the 1-1 podcast for WA Racing. Can highly recommend, especially getting involved with the Get Out Stakes, which is, I think, probably my favourite competition of all time. Outstanding work by both of you. Look, if you do have any comments, if you'd like to get involved, please leave comments below on the YouTube video. Get in contact with the mailbag on Twitter. We really want this to be a driving conversation. We're not really out here to attack anyone, because obviously there's heaps of positives that we haven't mentioned in terms of, look, it was very enjoyable being on course for all 3 days of the carnival. The track's been playing outstanding fashion. So really, we're very passionate about our industry.
That's why we're sitting here, because we are passionate.
Exactly.
We want to see the longevity
also,
of the industry.
isn't Ascot like a special place?
Yeah.
Like I remember
The
going to
hallowed turf.
Yeah.
I remember going to Ascot as a kid, and for me, being an absolute racing nerd from a very young age, Ascot was a Disneyland type thing for me. So, and it still has that feel when you walk into it. So, if we can bottle that and sort of see if we can sprinkle some of that across other things within the industry, then like there's a lot of potential here, and that's what you were talking about. Like there are a lot of advantages, especially from a wagering weather and actually our horse quality is quite good. Our riders and trainers are more than capable. So we just need a bit of innovation, a bit of creativity, and some strong leadership. I think, Pete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Share the video around to other members of the WA racing community, and then also wider as well. If you've got any comments, if you're an Eastern States punter that enjoys punting on WA racing, please let us know your thoughts in terms of being able to get on from that point of view as well. I think it's all really important going forward into 2020. We would really love to see some changes and innovation from a wagering point of view in the sport that we love, because otherwise, I'm not sure about you guys, but I'll be looking at AFL and cricket.
Fair enough.